I never imagined that it would come to this. When I married him, I truly believed we were a team. Through thick and thin, we would face everything together. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. I started to feel like I was the only one carrying the weight of our life together. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was small things. He'd forget to help with dinner or push off responsibilities, claiming work was too overwhelming. I told myself it was just a phase, that he was stressed, and I needed to be understanding. But it didn't stop. The longer it went on, the more I realized it wasn't just about the little chores or moments. It was about me being left to deal with everything on my own, emotionally, financially, physically. The tipping point came when I was dealing with a situation that required him to step up. I needed help. I had been asking for weeks, months even, but he just couldn't find the time. Maybe next week, he'd say, or I'll get to it later. But I was drowning. I was overwhelmed with responsibilities that were stacking up faster than I could handle, and I needed him. It was at that moment, sitting in the living room, feeling like I was the only one who cared about the mess around us, that I realized something. I couldn't keep waiting for him to change. I couldn't keep asking for help and being met with empty promises. If I wanted something done, I had to take matters into my own hands. I don't think I even fully understood what I was capable of until that point. I had always been the supportive wife, the one who held things together. But now I had reached my limit. I knew I had to do something for myself, something that would show everyone, including my husband, that I wasn't someone to be underestimated. I wasn't going to let my own dreams, my own goals, fall by the wayside just because he refused to support me. I was going to rise up and take control. And that's when the real change began. I wasn't going to ask for help anymore. I was going to show them all that I could do it on my own, that I could shock everyone and prove that I didn't need anyone to get where I wanted to go. The decision to take control was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It wasn't about wanting to prove a point to my husband. It was about proving something to myself. I had spent years feeling like my worth was tied to the roles I played: wife, mother, homemaker. But I had forgotten something important. I was more than just those labels. I was a person with my own dreams, my own ambitions, and I wasn't going to wait for permission to go after them. The first step was taking back my time. I had spent so much of my energy focusing on everyone else, my family, my home, his needs, that I had forgotten to take care of myself. It was time to change that. I started setting boundaries, saying no when I needed to, and carving out time for things that mattered to me. I knew it wouldn't be easy. After all, I had spent years prioritizing everyone else's needs over my own, but I was done with that. It was time to take the first step toward reclaiming my life. One day, after putting the kids to bed, I sat down at my laptop and began researching ways to start my own business. I had always been interested in it, but I had pushed it aside for so long, telling myself it wasn't the right time or that I couldn't handle it. But now, that wasn't good enough. If I wanted a different life, I had to create it. I started small, looking into online courses, reading articles, watching videos about entrepreneurship. The more I learned, the more I realized how much potential I had. I didn't tell my husband right away. I wasn't sure how he'd react. Would he be supportive? Or would he see it as another one of my crazy ideas? Either way, I knew I couldn't wait around for his approval. I had spent too much time asking for help that never came. This time, I was doing it for myself, and that meant moving forward no matter what. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into learning everything I could. I sacrificed sleep, spent late nights researching, and woke up early to get a head start on my day. I could feel the excitement building inside me. I felt like I was finally waking up from a long, endless slumber. My confidence began to grow, and I could feel the weight of my old life. The one where I had been stuck in a cycle of waiting and hoping for things to change, slowly lifting. Then I hit my first roadblock. My husband started noticing the change in me. He noticed I was spending more time on my laptop and less time cleaning or organizing. He noticed I was no longer asking for his help with the kids, instead, managing everything on my own. And of course, he noticed the lack of complaints. I wasn't the woman who waited around for him to offer support anymore. I was the woman who was doing it all herself. One evening, he confronted me. "Madison," he said, looking up from his phone, "what's going on with you? You've been acting different. What is this new thing you're working on? You can't just keep throwing all your time into something without telling me about it." For a moment, I hesitated. I knew what he wanted. He wanted me to say that I was working on something for us, something that would benefit both of us. But that wasn't the truth. This wasn't for him. This wasn't for anyone but me. "I'm starting something," I said, my voice steady. "Something for myself. Something I've wanted to do for a long time." He frowned. "I don't understand. You can't just throw everything else aside for some business idea. We have responsibilities. We have kids. I thought we were a team." I felt the anger rising in me, but I held it back. "We were a team," I said, "but I've been carrying everything on my own for so long, and I can't keep doing that. I need to build something for myself, something that gives me a sense of purpose outside of this house. I'm not asking for your permission, I'm telling you because it affects all of us." He didn't respond immediately. There was silence, and in that silence, I could feel the weight of the years I had spent putting everyone else's needs before mine. It felt like a moment of clarity, like I had finally broken free from the cage I had put myself in. "I don't need your help," I continued, my voice quieter now. "I've been waiting for you to step up, but I can't wait anymore. I've made my decision, and I'm going to do this, whether you're on board or not." The room was still. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He wasn't used to me standing up for myself, wasn't used to me taking charge like this. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't asking for permission. I was claiming my own path. And for the first time, I realized something important. I wasn't just doing this for me. I was doing this for all of us. If I could show him that I was capable of achieving something on my own, maybe he would see that we could still be a team, one that respected each other's independence and dreams. It wasn't about getting his approval or waiting for him to step up. It was about showing him that I was more than just a wife and mother. I was a woman who could make her own dreams come true, and no matter what, I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't sure what to expect after that night. The conversation with my husband had left a strange sense of tension between us. On one hand, I had finally spoken my truth, and on the other, I wasn't sure if he understood just how much this meant to me. The weight of the decision to take matters into my own hands wasn't something that could be easily undone, no matter how much he tried to brush it off. For a few days, things felt off. We didn't talk much, and every time I walked into the room, I could feel the coldness in the air. But something within me had shifted, and I knew there was no turning back. I had made my choice, and no matter how uncomfortable it felt at the moment, it was the right one. I dove even deeper into my business idea. I had to. This was my chance to prove to myself that I could do this. I wasn't just a stay-at-home mom who waited for help. I was a woman with ambition, with a desire to create something that would change my life. I had already sacrificed so much for the family, but now it was my turn to focus on my future. Days turned into weeks, and slowly I began to feel a shift in myself. I was waking up earlier, getting more done, and taking control of my life in a way I never had before. I wasn't perfect. There were days when the weight of it all felt like too much, but I kept pushing forward. I found joy in the progress, however small, and that joy kept me going. Every time I crossed something off my to-do list, it was like a victory, and with each win, I gained more confidence. But of course, not everything went smoothly. My husband's silence grew heavier, and there were times when I caught him watching me with a look of confusion, maybe even doubt. He didn't get it. He didn't understand that this wasn't about him or about our marriage. It was about me. And the longer he stayed silent, the more I realized that I couldn't depend on him to come around. This journey was mine to walk, and if he couldn't respect that, then it was time for me to move forward without waiting for his approval. It was one evening when the tipping point finally came. I had spent hours working on my business plan, tweaking everything until it felt right. The kids were in bed, and I was in my office, preparing to make the final decision about whether to go ahead with launching my project. I wasn't going to let fear hold me back any longer. As I sat there, scrolling through my plans, my husband walked in, looking like he had something on his mind. He stood in the doorway, watching me for a moment before he finally spoke. "Madison," he said, his voice softer than usual. "I've been thinking about what you said, about what you're doing. I want you to know that I see it now. I see how hard you've been working, and I respect that." I looked up at him, unsure if I had heard him correctly. Was this really happening? Was he finally seeing me? "I've been so focused on my own things that I didn't notice what you needed," he continued. "I've been blind to the fact that you've been carrying so much on your own, and I'm sorry. I should have been there for you." For a moment, everything stopped. I didn't know how to respond. It wasn't that I wanted his apology or that I needed his validation. It was more about hearing him finally acknowledge what I had been feeling for so long. It felt like the weight of everything we had been through was starting to lift, and I could see the possibility of something better ahead. But it wasn't enough to change everything. It wasn't enough to make me go back to the way things were. I had made my decision, and that was final. "I appreciate you saying that," I said, my voice steady but firm. "But this, what I'm doing, it's not about you. It's not about the marriage. It's about me. And I need you to understand that." He nodded, and for the first time in a long while, I saw him truly listen. "Then I'll support you," he said quietly. "I may not understand it all, but I'll support you." And that was it. The conversation ended there, but in that moment, I knew everything had changed. It wasn't about him being on board or not anymore. It was about me knowing that I could stand on my own 2 feet. I didn't need his approval to chase my dreams. I didn't need him to validate my worth. I had already done that for myself. The next few weeks were a blur. I launched my business, and the response was overwhelming. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. The feedback I got, the small victories, made everything worth it. I could feel the momentum building, and with each step forward, I knew that I had made the right choice. There were still moments of doubt, of course, times when I would question whether I was doing enough, whether I was making the right moves. But deep down, I knew that I wasn't just building a business, I was building my life. I was building the future I had always wanted, and that was worth fighting for. As time went on, I began to see changes in my husband as well. He started helping around the house more, pitching in without me having to ask. He became more present, more aware of the things I needed, not just as his wife, but as an individual. And maybe that was the real victory in all of this. Not the business, not the money, but the fact that we were beginning to see each other for who we truly were. But for me, the most important lesson was this. I didn't need anyone's permission to be who I was. I didn't need anyone to approve of my dreams. I had the strength to create my own path, and that was all I needed to know. As the days passed, I started to realize that my life was changing in ways I hadn't anticipated. I had taken that first step to do something for myself, and in doing so, I had unintentionally started a chain reaction that was shifting everything around me. My husband's attitude had shifted, and so had mine. We were no longer in the same routine of me asking for help, waiting for things to change. Instead, I was moving forward, building something on my own, and it was starting to feel right. But there were still moments when I couldn't ignore the fact that things weren't perfect. Sure, my business was growing, and my confidence was growing along with it. But there were times when I found myself feeling torn. My old self, the one who had always put everyone else first, was still in there, waiting to resurface. It was difficult to shed all those years of living in the shadows of everyone else's needs. I knew I had to keep pushing through, but some days, the guilt would creep in. One evening, after a long day of working on my business, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the pile of unfinished tasks, feeling overwhelmed. My husband was in the living room, watching TV, and the kids were tucked in bed. It was one of those quiet nights, the kind where everything felt too still. I knew I had made progress, but a small part of me still questioned if I was doing enough. Was I neglecting my family? Was I missing something? I wanted to be successful, but I didn't want to lose sight of the things that mattered the most: my family, my home, and the people I loved. I took a deep breath and made a decision. I couldn't keep struggling with the guilt. I had to find a way to balance it all. I had to remind myself that I wasn't abandoning my family or my responsibilities. I was carving out space for my own dreams, and in the process, I was teaching my kids that they could do the same. The next day, I sat down with my husband and had a conversation, one that I should have had much earlier. I explained that I had been feeling conflicted, that the success of my business was important to me, but so was being present for our family. I needed him to understand that it wasn't about me wanting to escape or not care about what we had built together. It was about me finding fulfillment in something outside of our family, something that was just for me. I wanted to be a good wife, a good mother, and a good entrepreneur. I didn't want to feel torn between those roles anymore. To my surprise, he listened. He didn't brush me off, didn't make excuses. He actually listened, and after a long pause, he finally spoke. "I didn't realize how much you were carrying, Madison," he said, his voice softer than I'd heard in a long time. I've been so caught up in my own world that I didn't see how much you were sacrificing. I've been blind to it. I'll do better. I want to support you. I want to be part of this journey with you. For the first time in a long time, I felt like he truly understood. It wasn't just about his support. It was about him acknowledging the effort I had been putting in and how much it mattered to me. I didn't need him to fix everything for me, but I did need him to see me, to see what I was doing, and to appreciate it. I appreciate that, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I just need to know you're with me on this. I need you to be involved in our family, but also in what I'm doing. I can't do this alone anymore. We're a team, and I need you to step up in a way I've been waiting for. He nodded, and I could see the sincerity in his eyes. I will. I'll make the effort, I promise. That conversation didn't just change things between us. It changed the way I viewed my business. It wasn't just something I did alone anymore. It wasn't just mine to carry. I had someone who was willing to share the load, who was ready to be part of the journey. It was a partnership, a real partnership, and it felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. From that moment on, we started to find a rhythm together. My husband took on more of the household responsibilities, and I was able to carve out more time to focus on my business. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than it had been. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel guilty about chasing my dreams. I didn't feel like I was neglecting my family or losing myself in the process. I was learning to balance everything in a way that worked for me. My business continued to grow, and so did my confidence. As time went on, I started to realize that I was no longer the woman who waited for help to come. I wasn't the one who sat around hoping things would change. I was the one who made things happen. I was the one who built something from nothing, and now I was showing my family, especially my kids, that they could do the same. I wasn't just proving something to myself. I was showing them that no dream was too big to chase, and no obstacle was too great to overcome. And with every new step, every new milestone, I felt the strength growing within me. I wasn't just building a business anymore. I was building a legacy, a life that I could be proud of, not just for me, but for all of us. This wasn't just about payback or proving a point. This was about reclaiming my life, my purpose, and my future. And no matter what, I knew I would never stop. I had finally taken control, and I would never let go. As the weeks went by, the changes I had made in my life began to feel more natural. I was no longer constantly battling between guilt and ambition. The shift wasn't just in my business. It was in how I saw myself and my relationship. The more I focused on what I wanted, the more I realized that this wasn't just about proving my worth to others. It was about showing myself that I was capable of achieving anything I set my mind to. But with success came new challenges. I had started to experience the fruits of my hard work, but I also noticed that my life was becoming more demanding. My business was growing, and the responsibilities I had at home were still there. It felt like there was never enough time in the day to get everything done, and at times I found myself stretching thin, trying to balance everything. I knew I needed help, both at home and in my business. But this time, I couldn't afford to just shoulder everything on my own. I took a step back, looked at what I had built, and realized that I had to let go of some of the control. My business was no longer a small side project. It was something real, something with the potential to grow even further. But I couldn't do it all by myself. I had to trust others, delegate responsibilities, and lean on the support system I had around me. It was a difficult decision to make. I had spent so long doing everything on my own, but now I had to shift my mindset. I hired help for the business, someone who could take over some of the day-to-day tasks, allowing me to focus on the bigger picture. It was one of the hardest things I had ever done. Letting go of control didn't come naturally to me, but I had to accept that if I wanted to scale my success, I couldn't keep doing everything myself. And as soon as I made that decision, something shifted. The pressure I had been carrying seemed to ease, and I realized that asking for help didn't make me weak, it made me stronger. The changes didn't stop there. I also had to make sure my home life was in balance. My husband had made promises to step up, but I knew I couldn't just rely on words. I needed to see action. It wasn't about me demanding more from him. It was about us working together as a team. I didn't want to feel like I was carrying the weight of everything again, so I sat down with him and we had another conversation about the future. "I need you to be more involved," I told him, my voice calm but firm. "I can't keep doing this alone. I've worked hard to get to where I am, but I need you to step up in a real way. I can't continue to do everything." He looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I could see the sincerity in his eyes. "I know I haven't been there the way I should have," he admitted, "but I want to be different. I want to be part of this with you, not just on the sidelines." It felt like a breakthrough. I had spent so long feeling like I was doing it all alone. But in that moment, I realized that the effort he was putting in was genuine. He was finally seeing how much I was juggling and was ready to make an effort to share the load. And for the first time, it wasn't about me asking for help. It was about him offering it without me needing to demand it. Over the next few weeks, I began to see the changes. He took on more responsibilities at home, helping with the kids and taking care of the things I didn't have time for. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments when I had to remind him of things. But I saw a shift in how we were operating as a couple. He was more present, more involved, and I could see that he was finally understanding the sacrifices I had made for so long. It wasn't just about him stepping up to help. It was about him being an active participant in our shared life. My business also continued to thrive, and the more I took a step back to focus on the larger picture, the more I realized that this was just the beginning. With the right people in place and the support I had at home, I could finally see the future I had been working toward. The path was clearer now, and it was no longer just about making it day by day. It was about building something sustainable, something that would last. But with success came new challenges, and I knew that this wasn't the end of the journey. There would be moments of doubt, times when I questioned if I was doing enough. But I also knew that I had already come so far. I had proven to myself that I could do it, that I could take control of my life and build something amazing. And now I wasn't doing it for anyone else but me. I wasn't looking for validation anymore. I was looking for fulfillment, for the satisfaction of knowing that I had fought for what I wanted and had earned every step of success. As I looked back on everything I had accomplished, I felt a sense of pride. I wasn't just the wife, the mother, the homemaker. I was a woman who had taken control of her own destiny. And as I looked ahead, I knew that I was just getting started. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was mine to walk. No longer would I wait for permission to follow my dreams. I had already taken that first step, and with every move I made, I knew that the life I had built was mine, and no one could ever take that away from me. The more I focused on building my business and strengthening my family dynamic, the more I realized just how far I'd come. It wasn't just about getting the support I needed or watching my business grow. It was about the fact that I had taken control of my life, that I had fought for my dreams and created something for myself. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. But there were still moments when I had to remind myself how much I had overcome to get here. There were times when the pressure of everything, the business, my family, my marriage, felt like it might break me. It wasn't that I wasn't capable of handling it all. I was. But there were still moments when the weight of it all made me wonder if I was doing the right thing. Could I keep this up? Was I truly in control? Or was I just a woman pretending to have everything together? I had a moment like that one evening after another long day of juggling my business tasks and family responsibilities. The kids were asleep, and my husband had finally wrapped up his work for the day. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the pile of papers, the business plans, and the to-do lists that never seemed to shrink. I could feel my mind racing, overwhelmed with everything I had to do. I hadn't felt this exhausted in a long time. Madison? My husband's voice broke through the silence, and I looked up to find him standing in the doorway. He could tell I was struggling, and for the first time, I felt seen. "I'm fine," I said, trying to sound reassuring. But he could tell that wasn't the case. "You've been doing this for months now," he said, walking over to sit beside me. "Are you sure you're okay? You don't have to carry this all by yourself." I shook my head, my frustration bubbling up. "I'm not carrying it alone. I've built this on my own, but I can't keep pretending like it's easy. There's so much I need to do, and I feel like I'm constantly playing catch up. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." He looked at me, his expression softening. "You don't have to do everything alone, Madison. You've built something incredible, but that doesn't mean you can't ask for help. I'm here. I'm part of this now. You don't need to do it all yourself." His words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I had convinced myself that I had to be the one to do everything, to make it all work. I had created this life, this business, with my own hands. But somewhere along the way, I had lost sight of the fact that I wasn't supposed to do it alone. I wasn't meant to carry the burden of everything on my shoulders. I've been so focused on proving that I could do it, that I didn't stop to think about the support I needed, I said, my voice cracking. I thought if I could do everything on my own, then I'd be enough. But now, I realize that maybe I'm not meant to do this alone. Maybe it's okay to ask for help. He took my hand in his, squeezing it gently. "It's okay. You don't have to carry this all by yourself. We're a team, and it's time we act like it." In that moment, everything shifted. I had spent so long fighting to prove I could do it all that I had forgotten that asking for help wasn't a weakness. It was strength. It wasn't about needing someone else to make me whole. It was about recognizing that, together, we could achieve more than I ever could on my own. I wasn't just building a business. I was building a life with my partner, and that meant sharing the load, trusting each other, and being there for each other when things got tough. Over the next few days, I made a conscious effort to let go of some of the control. I started delegating more tasks, both at home and in my business. I trusted my husband more, knowing that he was genuinely trying to be a better partner, a better father. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard. And there were moments when I found myself slipping back into my old ways, thinking I had to do it all. But every time I did, I reminded myself that I didn't have to. I also made changes to my business. I hired more help, brought in a few people who could take on the tasks that had been weighing me down. It felt strange at first, letting go of some of the responsibilities, but the relief I felt was undeniable. I had built this business, yes, but I didn't have to keep it all together on my own. I wasn't alone in this anymore. I had built a team, not just at work, but at home too. And as the weeks went by, I began to see the results of my efforts. My business continued to thrive, but I also saw improvements in my family life. My husband stepped up in ways I hadn't expected. He became more involved with the kids, more supportive of my work, and more present in our relationship. We weren't perfect, but we were learning to communicate better, to share the load, and to support each other through the ups and downs. I realized something crucial. True strength doesn't come from doing everything yourself. It comes from knowing when to lean on others, when to share the load, and when to ask for help. I had spent so long trying to prove I could do it all, but now I saw that the most powerful thing I could do was to trust others, to trust my husband, to trust my team, and to trust myself. Looking back, I could see how far I had come. From the woman who once felt invisible, waiting for help that never came, to the woman who had taken control of her life and built something incredible. It wasn't easy, but it was worth every sacrifice, every moment of doubt. I had learned to embrace both my independence and my need for support. And in doing so, I had created a life I was proud of. The road wasn't always smooth, but with every step forward, I knew I was becoming the person I had always wanted to be. Strong, confident, and capable of handling whatever came my way. And I was no longer doing it alone. The months after I made those changes were nothing short of transformative. I could feel the shift in myself, in my marriage, and in my business. It wasn't just about finding success anymore. It was about finding balance, about realizing that my dreams weren't limited by what I could handle alone. I hadn't felt this exhausted in a long time. Madison? My husband's voice broke through the silence, and I looked up to find him standing in the doorway. He could tell I was struggling, and for the first time, I felt seen. "I'm fine," I said, trying to sound reassuring. But he could tell that wasn't the case. "You've been doing this for months now," he said, walking over to sit beside me. "Are you sure you're okay? You don't have to carry this all by yourself." I shook my head, my frustration bubbling up. "I'm not carrying it alone. I've built this on my own, but I can't keep pretending like it's easy. There's so much I need to do, and I feel like I'm constantly playing catch-up. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." He looked at me, his expression softening. "You don't have to do everything alone, Madison. You've built something incredible, but that doesn't mean you can't ask for help. I'm here. I'm part of this now. You don't need to do it all yourself." His words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I had convinced myself that I had to be the one to do everything, to make it all work. I had created this life, this business, with my own hands. But somewhere along the way, I had lost sight of the fact that I wasn't supposed to do it alone. I wasn't meant to carry the burden of everything on my shoulders. I've been so focused on proving that I could do it, that I didn't stop to think about the support I needed, I said, my voice cracking. I thought if I could do everything on my own, then I'd be enough. But now, I realize that maybe I'm not meant to do this alone. Maybe it's okay to ask for help. He took my hand in his, squeezing it gently. "It's okay. You don't have to carry this all by yourself. We're a team, and it's time we act like it." In that moment, everything shifted. I had spent so long fighting to prove I could do it all that I had forgotten that asking for help wasn't a weakness. It was strength. It wasn't about needing someone else to make me whole. It was about recognizing that, together, we could achieve more than I ever could on my own. I wasn't just building a business. I was building a life with my partner, and that meant sharing the load, trusting each other, and being there for each other when things got tough. Over the next few days, I made a conscious effort to let go of some of the control. I started delegating more tasks, both at home and in my business. I trusted my husband more, knowing that he was genuinely trying to be a better partner, a better father. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard, and there were moments when I found myself slipping back into my old ways, thinking I had to do it all. But every time I did, I reminded myself that I didn't have to. I also made changes to my business. I hired more help, brought in a few people who could take on the tasks that had been weighing me down. It felt strange at first, letting go of some of the responsibilities, but the relief I felt was undeniable. I had built this business, yes, but I didn't have to keep it all together on my own. I wasn't alone in this anymore. I had built a team, not just at work, but at home too. And as the weeks went by, I began to see the results of my efforts. My business continued to thrive, but I also saw improvements in my family life. My husband stepped up in ways I hadn't expected. He became more involved with the kids, more supportive of my work, and more present in our relationship. We weren't perfect, but we were learning to communicate better, to share the load, and to support each other through the ups and downs. I realized something crucial. True strength doesn't come from doing everything yourself. It comes from knowing when to lean on others, when to share the load, and when to ask for help. I had spent so long trying to prove I could do it all, but now I saw that the most powerful thing I could do was to trust others, to trust my husband, to trust my team, and to trust myself. Looking back, I could see how far I had come. From the woman who once felt invisible, waiting for help that never came, to the woman who had taken control of her life and built something incredible. It wasn't easy, but it was worth every sacrifice, every moment of doubt. I had learned to embrace both my independence and my need for support. And in doing so, I had created a life I was proud of. The road wasn't always smooth, but with every step forward, I knew I was becoming the person I had always wanted to be. Strong, confident, and capable of handling whatever came my way. And I was no longer doing it alone. The months after I made those changes were nothing short of transformative. I could feel the shift in myself, in my marriage, and in my business. It wasn't just about finding success anymore. It was about finding balance, about realizing that my dreams weren't limited by what I could handle alone. And that was the greatest victory of all. As the months went by, things continued to improve. My business was flourishing, my relationship with my husband had never been better, and I had finally reached a point where I could say with confidence that I was living the life I had always dreamed of. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long, feeling overwhelmed, underappreciated, and constantly fighting for my place, was gone. In its place was peace, and more importantly, a sense of fulfillment. Looking back on everything I had been through, I realized that the most important thing I had learned wasn't just how to run a successful business or how to balance my life. It was the strength I had found within myself. It was the courage to stand up for what I wanted, to ask for help when I needed it, and to trust that I didn't have to do everything alone. I had spent so much time waiting for others to step up, but the moment I took control, everything began to fall into place. But even as I looked back, I knew this journey wasn't over. There were still challenges ahead. There would always be challenges. But for the first time, I felt ready to face them. I had the tools, the mindset, and the support I needed to keep moving forward. And I wasn't afraid of what came next, because if anything, the last few months had taught me that I could handle whatever life threw my way. With my business growing, my family thriving, and my confidence at an all-time high, I finally understood that success wasn't just about achieving your goals. It was about how you balanced your ambitions with the people you loved, how you took care of yourself while chasing your dreams, and how you learned to trust both yourself and others. I had built something incredible, not just a business, but a life, and it had all started with a decision. The decision to stop waiting for others to make things happen and to take matters into my own hands. As I moved forward, I promised myself that I would never again let fear, doubt, or guilt hold me back from pursuing what I truly wanted. I had learned that the road to success was never straight, but it was always worth it. And even when things got tough, I now knew that I was strong enough to push through and come out on the other side stronger than before. If you're listening to my story, I hope you've learned something from it. No matter what challenges you're facing, no matter how tough it seems, remember that you have the power to take control of your life. You don't have to wait for permission, and you don't have to do it alone. You are stronger than you think, and the life you dream of is within your reach. All it takes is the courage to take that first step. So, if you're ready to take control of your own life, to stop waiting and start living, subscribe to the channel for more stories, inspiration, and life lessons. Don't miss the next chapter of this journey. You never know what might happen next. So stick around, subscribe, and be part of this incredible ride. Lesson to take away. Life is a journey of ups and downs, but the key to success is never giving up. Believe in yourself, take control of your destiny, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. The power to change your life is always in your hands. Keep pushing, keep believing, and remember that you're capable of achieving anything you set your mind to.